2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
Do I need to fire my God?
Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers.
We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
I'm glad we're recording in remotely so I don't get hit by lightning after you ask that one.
You love these kinds of topics, man. You love to just kind of get people questioning, stir the pot a little bit, So
well, I do. I love when people are in suffering. I love to rattle their cage a little bit to try to get them out of suffering. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all about this.
This is the kind of topic where we get kind of mixed reviews by the time it's all said and done, where some people go, oh man, that really made a lot of sense to me, and other people go, man, those guys are blasphemous.
Depending on where they're at, they'll love it or hate it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we welcome it all. So we'll see how it plays out as we get into this topic a little bit.
Yeah. Before we dive in, I want to check in. How are you?
Things are going great, man. We're getting really, really close to the Radiant Dawn conference by the time this episode comes out. Really excited about that. It's one of my favorite things of everything that we do.
Yeah. It's kind of on getting on top of the mind here to get ready for it. So
that's right.
A couple months away still. It's at the end of March. If you're interested, go over to radiantdawn.com. And we've already talked a ton about it. I think if you're on the fence, just do it. Just come. So, wow, there's a little commercial we threw in there, Tyler. I didn't expect that.
We like doing that sometimes.
You are a master marketer, man. Just a master businessman, marketing fool.
That is not my forte at all, Brandon. I like to help people. You like to do the marketing and the planning and the strategizing. So I'm just here to help people.
Yeah. I'm the therapist at heart here.
Well, then let's jump into the topic a little bit, Brandon. I'm kind of wondering, I'm going to have you just kind of start and explain a little bit about why we're doing this topic today and what's on your brain.
Yeah. I mean, so it's really fascinating if you think about kind of the culture that we work within, the topic that we specialize in. And it's just really, really fascinating. God is intertwined through all of it. Religion is intertwined through all of it. And through doing this over the years that we've done it, we talk a lot about father wounds. We talk a lot about trauma. And there's such thing as spiritual wounds, and there's also, I don't know if God ever really wounds us, but a lot of times people feel like God has wounded them. And there's a lot of confusion and disconnection and shame involved with their relationship with God. And so they're worshiping a God oftentimes that is actually getting them results of shame, disconnection, and addiction. Yet they continue to worship that God, which actually continues to give them those results. And I just want to kind of take a look at that for a minute. A lot of times people can't see it. They don't understand that maybe it's their perception of God or belief in God that they have that's actually contributing to their problems. So I wanted to discuss it with you to just kind of flush it out, to get people to really look within at their relationship with God and ask the question, is this working for me? Is God really an asset for me to feel peace and love? Or is my understanding of God an actual source of shame? So in a nutshell, Tyler, that's kind of...
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like we talk, I mean, you look at the 12 steps, and the first few steps of the 12 steps are all about relationship with God. If you were to go to a treatment like you or I run, like a group treatment, we market ourselves as a Christian-based sort of recovery program, and we invite people to be in a wrestle with God at the same time that a lot of times our clients are coming in with an actual wrestle with God, with who is God? Does God love me? Is God angry at me? Is there a God? Why did God curse me? All of these questions. And we want to be able to create space where it's okay to have that wrestle with a higher power and to ask some of those questions. And a lot of people, based off of what we do, come in with preconceived notions about who God is that they've never actually been able to question before in their lives. And some of what they've never questioned could potentially be causing them harm or to stay stuck in the very cycle that they're trying to break.
But Tyler, the seeds of this start very young. And if we can kind of tell the story a little bit, and then you can kind of see how it's developed. So this is what I see is you take a young person who's a sexual being, they start to hit puberty, they start to get curious about sex. They're going to a religion or their household that they're raised in is very rigid or awkward or uncomfortable around the topic of sexuality. And sex oftentimes is very much just associated with sin. Sexuality is sin. And so when you're a 12-year-old, and you find pornography for the first time, or, when you're a young girl and you masturbate for the first time, or whatever it is, there's tons of feelings of confusion and shame, and it leads to a lot of secrecy. And that secrecy leads to more feelings of shame. And then you want an escape from those feelings, which leads back to this compulsion, and the sexuality comes up, and what do you know? That provides you this escape, which gives you more shame. All the while, there's this kind of narrative behind the scenes, if you're in a pretty rigid system, that God is unhappy with me. God is not okay with who I am because of what I do. If I like something that's so bad, therefore I must be bad. Therefore, I must not really be lovable to God fully. And if I change something, then I'll be good enough. But I can't change this thing. I want to change it, but I just can't. I can't stop doing it. So I must just be bad. The story goes on, into marriage. You turn your spouse into your God. You try to get your self-worth from your spouse. You hide things from them. You feel horrible about who you are. You get caught, you get in big trouble. It's proven true that you're bad, that you're not okay. But all the while, what you don't really know is how much God actually truly loves you and how much God is actually truly there for you right now in this moment. And So you're trying to please this God by being good enough. You're trying to earn your love by being sin-free enough, so to speak. And you're feeding this narrative that all I am is broken and unlovable. Right. So that's what I see a lot of, Tyler.
Yeah, I think it's like this combination of things that seems to happen, Brandon, where, whether it's that rigid family system or maybe it's the church culture or whatever church we're raised in that kind of sends the messages. I don't think oftentimes it's intentionally like sending the message of shame. What's really happening is that the culture or the church or whatever is trying to teach a principle, but they teach it in a way that doesn't give the why behind things. And so what it leads to is a message of, if you do these things, then you're not worthy, right? And for somebody who's kind of going through this struggle, what they feel is the sense of unworthiness, but they don't have the education of the why behind the reason the principle is being taught, or the way that it's going to protect them, or the way that it's going to help them, or they don't get the normalization of their other side of the feelings, because it feels almost like if those feelings get normalized, then maybe we're condoning a behavior or something, which doesn't necessarily need to be the case. But you mix that together, and then we have this idea, a lot of us get this idea in our mind of who God is, and that God is there in a transactional kind of a way to either reward us when we're doing good with blessings, or to punish us when we're doing bad with sins. And that almost gets ingrained to a point that as the addiction continues to move in the downward spiral, that the hole seems deeper, the unworthiness seems bigger, the brokenness seems more, to where a lot of our clients get to the place of either they almost have to not believe in a God, or they have to believe that they'll never be good enough. But they never actually pause to stop and go, wait a minute, is that actually the nature of like who God is? Because we've interpreted it for so long, and we found evidence for so long of all the reasons why that must be true, that we're broken or unworthy, that we never even pause to actually stop and ask the question. And yet we have to come back to the same place, our relationship with God, right? When you walk into a recovery center, it starts with God. And now the place where I'm getting some of the biggest shame, I've never even questioned that relationship, but now I'm being told that that's the answer.
Well, but so Tyler, this is complicated, because according to the theology of what you learn at church, I think that affects your relationship with God. Also, according to your experience that you've had with your own parents, that really affects how you view God, because we view God as a parental figure. And so we think God is like our parents. So if we have a lot of father wounds or whatever, it's hard to negotiate and understand that relationship with God, because it's a complicated relationship with mom and dad. But I want to ask you this, back to the theology thing. Is grace freely given?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So in a lot of cultures, and every religion's a little bit different when we come to the topic of grace, but grace is a freely given gift. And a lot of times it gets paired up with, but faith without works is dead. Right.
After all you can do, then
Yes.
grace is given. Right.
Yes.
So if grace is freely given, that matters, because what this says, we could kind of get to is God loves you so much that God just gives you this grace. No matter what you do, you can be forgiven, you are loved, versus after all you can do, versus the works must be there and then the reward is given. Mm-hmm. And so there's this, why is this so important? Why am I bringing this up? It brings up this whole transactional model with God, or I call it the contingency model with God, that your blessings are contingent upon your obedience and your worthiness. When your blessings are contingent upon your obedience and your worthiness, then you're always trying to prove yourself to God. Another thing, Tyler, like this is the religion according to Brandon, or whatever, Brandon's religion here, is sex of God? Or is sex disgusting, dirty, sinful, wrong.
Right. That, you mean that's what it's saying, being taught?
Well, I'm asking, like, I think.
Oh, you're asking the question.
Yeah, I think that question is important to ask yourself: is sexuality, is that from God?
Yes. Okay. Right. And that's a good question. And I would say that in most of the religions that we work with, I would say that there's kind of like this weird double-edged sword where, theologically, in our church, it actually says in the actual like manual that the youth read, sex is ordained of God. Right. But then in other cultural ways, all that ever gets talked about in church is all the ways that sex gets misused. And then it makes it sound like it's bad.
And there's never positive talk about healthy sexuality.
There's not very much talk about all of the benefits of healthy sexuality. And as we're talking, Brandon, I'm thinking like, I bet I could count on just one hand in all of the years that we've done therapy, a client that ends up in our office that says, yeah, the first time I saw porn, my parents pulled me aside and said, hey, you're probably curious about this. You got sexual feelings. God built you with those sexual feelings. Let's talk about that. Let's explore what was going on for you. Let's see the blessing of your sexuality, and then also juxtapose that against the blessings of the doctrines of chastity or whatever. Most people don't end up in our office if they're taught that way.
Right.
Most people end up in our office when the first time they see porn and they get caught for it, they're like, oh my gosh, you need to go talk to your church leader, or you're unworthy, or, oh, this is horrible. You're going to end up in da, 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 da. And it's like the sexuality of that being actually gets dismissed or made to feel dirty. And then that's where the shame takes root. Causes people to stay stuck in that cycle. And now they've got God laid over the top of that. That's like watching them. And every time they act out, they start to attach things like, oh man, the reason why my wife just got like cancer is because I couldn't stop acting out. Or, oh man, the reason why this bad thing happened is because I couldn't stop acting out.
God is punishing me.
Right.
God knows that I masturbated last night. So that's why I got in this car accident today.
Right.
That type of thinking.
Yeah.
Because you just did a good job describing it, Tyler. Going to church and actually having those messages given to you of sexuality is bad. Your blessings and your love from God comes through they call it faith. I don't even think this is faith, but through your obedience. And so if you're obedient, then you'll get the good blessings. If you're masturbating, you're looking at porn, then you get the bad blessings. And so then that's the nature of God to somebody. And then that perpetuates the problem.
That's where grace gets pulled into it too, because you and I have our own separate beliefs here, Brandon, but I actually do believe that there is merit to the things that we're asked to do in terms of the law of chastity. I believe there's protection in that law. There is certain blessing that comes when you follow whatever the commands of God are, and it doesn't inoculate you from the fact that there's still going to be problems, that you're still going to have challenges. And that's where I think people get confused sometimes, is there are certain levels of blessings that come when you follow certain principles.
I would, but this is what I would say, Tyler, and I think you'll agree with this, is even if I'm seemingly doing something good, if I'm doing it with a heart full of shame, then I'm actually not creating good in my life. So God looketh on the heart, right? And so, yeah, these principles are good. The structure's fine. It's all wonderful. But if I'm spending my life in a state of fear because I'm worried that God's going to condemn me, then I'm going to play small in my life. My relationships will struggle. All kinds of things will happen. But you know what? Rah, rah, rah. I was righteous. I was good. Those are good things, sure, but they're not good things done for the wrong reasons.
Sure. But in that example, you still avoid the potential of STDs, and you avoid the potential of an early pregnancy, and you still have certain blessings by living that way, even if your intention isn't like pure. But that's where the real issue comes in terms of addiction is that if it's still fear-based, because it's a contractual relationship with God, it's still likely to keep you stuck in the same patterns of not liking yourself or accepting the truth of who you really are. And then It doesn't allow, what it really doesn't allow is for us to actually claim upon the grace that is already there.
Yes, you're working
Right.
your own atonement.
Right.
You're trying to prove yourself in order to be okay and good enough. And you're not allowing for that space of love in your imperfection. In the 12 steps, you bring up the 12 steps. Step 1, 2, and 3 are all about surrender to God. From the very get-go, saying, I'm imperfect. I want to have hope that God is there for me in my life, and I want to turn my will and my life over the care of God. So the very basis of the 12 steps is I'm letting go. I'm letting go of this. And people think, they think if I let go and I let God into my life, then I don't trust myself. And so I don't, if I let go, then I'll just go off and do a bunch of horrible stuff. And that's not true. Because deep down, most people are just good. So if you let go and you let God into your life and you have God as your companion throughout all of this, even when you make mistakes, you're more likely to do good things.
I think that idea is there that, when we talk about the idea of who is God and what is God, God is love. And as we come to know more fully that love, what love does is it transforms our hearts so that we have, in the scriptures, it says, so that we have a kind of this system where we have no more disposition to do evil. And it's really, I think, connected to our acceptance of God's love that actually gives us that motivation. And so when we can accept the grace first and come to know who we are and how God sees us, the more fully that we give our lives over to him and allow that love to seep into our lives, the more we continue to make the decisions that would be in line with what we thought we needed to do all along. But now there's a heart that can hold it. There's a belief that says, I know who I am and in whom I've trusted. And there's room for that grace so that we can go and live our lives and engage in this beautiful gift or process that the Christian faith gives of repentance, right, which is a continual returning back to God and nurturing of that relationship.
I've asked my clients, Tyler, when you think about your relationship with God, is it a source of peace and love? Is it a place of safety? Is it a place that you look forward to going and pouring your heart out, talking about your struggles? Is that the type of heavenly parent, so to speak, that God is to you? Or when you think about your relationship with God, do you cringe when you have to go to God and say, this is who I am? And what's interesting, Tyler, those people that cringe and are disconnected and feel a lot of shame when it comes to God, or they're really angry at God, they are the ones that have the hardest time changing their beliefs in the God that they worship, because they feel guilty. They feel like, I can't challenge this because it's scary, because I don't know where I'll land. I have this set system in place of this non-sexual condemning God who's just there to get me. But like, that's all I've ever known. And if I challenge that, then I'm actually sinning. So God has told me I shouldn't question or challenge who he is. So I'm not going to even do that. And so they're back behind the 8 ball so far to let go of this, because fear is everywhere.
Right. And I think that's the challenge. I love the questions that you asked there, Brandon, where if our listeners are listening right now, they could ask themselves those questions, like, what is the nature of my relationship with God when I approach him? And if it is, oh no, or oh, not this again, or oh God, I'm going to feel so horrible if I were to have a conversation with him right now. It's not that the nature of God needs to change. It's at least worth looking at to consider that the nature of how I see God needs to possibly change. And that's a question that is worth asking if all I'm continually getting is more shame, more of the result that I don't want. That's the stepping off into the dark. That's the faith. That's the ability to pause and say, wait a minute, is there a different way that I could be looking at this that isn't necessarily God needing to change, but me actually needing to accept different principles about the nature and the truth of who God might be?
Yeah, which is scary.
Mhm.
And it's scary because it might create a total crisis inside of you of the way the world is and what you think about God and who God is. And at the same time, what's so horrible about that crisis if your relationship with God is just creating all this torment inside of you? Maybe a crisis is exactly what you need. And that's what, when we talk about fire your God, that's what we're talking about, is having the courage enough to ask yourself these questions and then going as far to say, I'm not going to worship a God anymore who is fear-based and control-based and force-based. And that's not my God anymore. My God's going to be much different. When we talked to Jared about swearing, that's an example, right? Where he said a swear word, and what do you know? He felt God's love when he said that swear word. I know that sounds like a little thing, but to him, that's him firing his old God.
That was a shift in the belief system.
Yeah. So that's just an example.
I'll give you a little bit more of a personal example too, Brandon. Just thinking about, every one of us is on our own journey, and my own journey. I think I was raised in a certain way with my own belief system about needing to be perfect and needing to be seen a certain way. And I think I subscribed to this thing that we talked about for a very long time of, I'm not going to be good enough in God's eyes ever, probably, but I'm going to sure try because that's what I have to do.
I'm going to work my butt off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And over the course of my own journey and into this actual recovery and also some healing from other traumas, what I found is that my own personal wrestle with God, probably 3 or 4 of the most poignant experiences that I've ever had with God myself have been in the midst of times when I felt the least worthy of his love.
Mm-hmm.
Being broken, feeling like responsible for the death of a friend, and there's God loving me, being responsible for potentially breaking up my marriage, and somehow God shows up in that broken moment, loving me.
Mm-hmm.
These kinds of places where my ego is finally so broken that I believe the truth was able to rise through it.
Yeah.
And the change for me has gone from this God who's there setting the rules and the expectations to a God who has always loved me. And he has certain principles that I would consider wholehearted living principles that he wants for me, that he wants for me to have even a greater aspect of joy in my life, because living those things brings that freedom and that joy. But it's shifted over the years. I've gone from being what I profess to be, in my own religion, a person who knew it was true, to this weird meandering journey now that's gone to all these questions of who God might actually be, to a person who actually chooses to believe. And I feel more at peace now in a person who chooses belief and faith than a person who had to know. Right. And for me, that's just been part of my journey, but I think it's fair to allow ourselves to go on that journey. There's a wrestle there. There's been many times when I've questioned God and I've questioned my own beliefs, and I know you have too. And like that's I believe that's the nature of part of what life is about, is that we need to continually do that wrestle.
Absolutely. So, and you know what, Tyler, I don't know if it would be good for us to know every bit of the nature of God. There's got to be an element of faith there. There's got to be an element of unknown that, I'm reading a book called The Sin of Certainty, and it's so fascinating because he's talking about how, we try to know exactly what God is and how that's problematic in our lives. But it's interesting what you said. The part of what you're talking about, your story, is how your ego had to be so broken down because your ego was actually in the way of understanding God's love. Yet your ego, you thought at least, was the thing that was helping you strive to gain God's love.
I thought the ego was the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was in those
because
weird
it was
moments.
there to protect you, right?
Yeah, it was there to let me do the things that I'd done to always survive, to put on a performance face, to do the right things, to make sure everyone thinks I was good enough.
Hold all the responsibility.
Yeah, and it was
for
in those
everybody.
moments You know, I remember one time right when it all broke loose with me and my wife, where I actually went into a church leader and I went in expecting to just have full on what I thought would be godly discipline, like, hey, maybe you're going to be disfellowshipped or excommunicated or whatever else. And the church leader listened to my story. And when he got done listening, he started to cry and he got up around his desk and he came and he put his arms around me and he said, I love you. And I want you to be in our church. We have something called a temple. I want you to be in the temple tomorrow. And I was like, what? Like, no, that's not how, did you hear what I just told you? Did you hear the story I just told you? And he said
you the opposite reaction.
He gave me this like grace and something about that shot through my ego and was like, whoa, I've been looking at this from such a different lens. I don't even know how to hold this now. Like I could be forgiven. I could be worthy of love right after I just told this story. And yet there it was. And the ego was just dismembered temporarily. Like, wow, yeah. Tyler, like the way you've been seeing yourself in the world is so false.
Yep.
And God has such a different view of you than you've ever thought he did.
Yep. I think we could do a whole other episode on this, but we don't connect to God through our ego. I'm not saying our ego is bad, but in our minds, when we're trying to, do exactly what we should, and in order to connect, it really causes disconnection. And I love the story you just told, Tyler. I mean, talk about just God getting to your heart, in those really vulnerable moments. So, well, Tyler, this is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. And I don't, my story is not your story or the next person's story, but I believe that all of us have a story and we have the gift and opportunity to go and pursue that journey with God on our own. But it is okay for us to actually be curious about our relationship with God and allow us to actually seek to understand the true nature of love, because that's ultimately who God is.
Absolutely. And if you just take the God that's been given to you and you just ingest that and you try, then I think you're missing out. And if you stop for a moment and you really ask yourself some of these questions and we call it initiate yourself with God. If you give God some time to meditate, to open up, to surrender, you're going to get some feelings, you're going to get some answers, and you're going to get some connection. So, All right, you guys, if this was helpful, then please share it with anybody. And we hope it got you thinking. We hope it rattled your cage a little bit today. So
thanks for being here with us, guys.
We'll see you later.